Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth, and opposite to that is mythology, science of fake or study of fake lie or imagination. I have a very special guest, and we will be very light on the show today. Without delay, let us welcome Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Abhijit, welcome.
Praise be to our Lord in Christ.
Abhijit, it's been a very funny moment. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi's speech has been one of the, for Indians who are living abroad, it was a heartwarming speech as well as very funny. What do you have to say on that? It was an amazing speech.
Well, I wish his actions on the ground matched up to his speeches. He gives fun speeches. Unfortunately, his rock star speeches don't match up to his substandard policies. So therein lies our problem. We have a great talker, but not a great, well, he's a good doer in certain things, So for example, electrification or toilets. He's done a truly amazing job where it requires a certain level of micromanagement. But when it comes to macromanagement, like the economy and things, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Now, this is yesterday's speech, and Tucker Carlson is burning all the way into all the camps in the United States, US politics. So recently, the Stelter, CNN, for the first time, we are seeing a funny name calling. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, and then all kinds of things going on. What did you say on the American media making fun of really fake news?
So, this is why I love the way you jumped from Modi to Tucker, because, the parallels are so similar. Essentially, Modi has made Rahul Gandhi irrelevant in Indian politics. And you know how they did it? Rahul Gandhi went on making out Modi to be some monster, some Darth Vader, some, love child of Mussolini and Hitler. Whereas Modi, for his part, made Rahul Gandhi out to be a clown. Now, people take Darth Vader very seriously, but people don't take clowns very seriously. Right? So clowns can't set the agenda, but Darth Vader can set the agenda. Because if you look throughout the Star Wars series, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo are perpetually responding to what Darth Vader does. Right? Now, you transpose that to the American context. Tucker Carlson here is Darth Vader. Right? People take him dead seriously. Because the left considers him dangerous. They tell you that he's a fascist spokesperson or whatever. Whereas Tucker Carlson, for his part, treats Brian Stelter and Jake Tapper and that Rachel Madcow and Rachel Madcow, and who's the other one? Well, he treats all these people like they're jokes. So what do you expect? See, the right can't take the left seriously. The left takes the right very, very seriously. Right? Therein lies the problem. But it's not just Tucker Carlson. You see this chap, Mark Dice. Every time he brings Brian Stelter on, he won't actually put Brian Stelter's voice. What he does is, he does a voiceover for Brian Stelter, and he deliberately goes, "It's shocking today. Trump said this, and it's outrageous." He deliberately puts a Daffy Duck, Donald Duck kind of voice onto Brian Stelter. And at that point, you're just laughing. Right? So I think it's somewhere between Tucker Carlson and Mark Dice. The kind of ridicule they poke. Tucker doesn't do fake voices, but, well, he does sometimes, but they've reduced the left to ridicule. And your ridicule hurts more than being called names. Being called names means you're being taken seriously. Ridiculing means you're not being taken seriously. And therein lies the problem. Tucker Carlson sets the agenda. When Tucker Carlson sets the agenda, the left goes, this is like Hitler in 1939, this is Czechoslovakia, this is the Sudetenland, you have to draw the line in the sand here. When Brian Stelter says something, it's like, yay, let's turn on the TV. It's the, it's the Lucy show. What was it the Lucy show?
The Lucy show.
Lucille Ball. That I remember I used to watch it as a kid. It was Daffy Duck. It was Looney Tunes. Yay! Let's turn on the TV. It's Looney Tunes. So somewhere between the German invasion of Czechoslovakia and Looney Tunes, this is really the choice you have. Ridicule is an extremely powerful tool, and that's what they've used.
No, one of the things that was very funny in the Joe Rogan's controversy right now, recently, and with the Spotify was banned by Jen Psaki, which is the White House spokesperson.
No, she didn't ban it. She asked Spotify to take action against people spreading misinformation. There's several issues out here. Everything that was considered misinformation that could get you banned on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and whatever is now accepted reality. Today, everybody accepts the Wuhan lab leak theory. Okay, there are a lot of things like this which used to get banned, which are now accepted medical fact. The problem here is they are using misinformation to control genuine academic dissent. And that's very, very problematic. Remember, Dr. Dead, what's his name? Dr. Theodosius or Tedros Ghebreyesus or whatever, the WHO chief. Let's just call him Dr. Dead. Dr. Dead's tweet saying, please don't wear masks. It actually puts you in more danger is still up on Twitter. Go check. Just run at the rate of Dr. Dead. Well, I mean, Dr. Tedros, I think that's what his Twitter handle is. And mask. And you see this tweet. Has he been banned for it? Today it's misinformation. So technically it should be banned. Correct? It's not banned. So this is basically trying to, it's a very Goebbelsian style of propaganda control. Okay. And let's look at the people accusing Joe Rogan. He has an adopted daughter who is Black. Okay, number one. Number two, the fellow accusing him, that chap Dan Winslow, has used that word several times in his book. That media house, the three brothers or whatever they are, the three Democratic super PAC types who made the video of him, the collage of him using the word, have apparently used it several times themselves. So there is a Junk Uyghur, the fellow who hosts the Young Turks. There's a video compilation of him using it. So either it applies to every, look, the law is the law when it is consistent in its application. The law shorn of consistency is tyranny. And therein lies our problem. We are not seeing a consistency of application, we are seeing selective application, which classically is the fundamental definition of tyranny.
You know, one of the most funny things was that when all the channels got this controversy on Joe Rogan and he was blocked, the Humpty Dumpty.
He's not been blocked. He's not been blocked.
I mean, yeah, but he was like Spotify, removed him right now. His podcast is.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They haven't.
The Stelter's comment was, the Humpty Dumpty's comment was that Humpty Dumpty said that we at CNN do a lot of research. We have research departments on health and politics and everything else. That's why we are credible. That's what he said. That's why we are credible. And so the question was, despite all those departments, you still come out with that kind of news.
Look, if you were today a Joe Rogan podcast, one program, a few hours, gets more viewers than CNN does in a whole week. Doesn't that tell you who's... and it's not to say Joe Rogan doesn't get it wrong. Frankly, I find some of his medical opinions have been quite bizarre and outlandish. But you can't ban somebody for being bizarre and outlandish. What's wrong? I thought we accept diversity. I mean, you want to accept trans and cis hair, what something, and you want to accept furries and have litter boxes for them in toilets in schools. You want diversity in form, not diversity of opinion. You're using diversity of form to suppress diversity of opinion. And that's a very dangerous thing.
The Canadian truckers have put the Prime Minister in quarantine. Yeah? And that Prime Minister was known for colorful socks and coming up with lines. And his biggest threat today is the truckers' talk. And the truckers are not following. They are the most extreme element in Canada today. And what about all the Canadian support to Khalistanis and Canadian support to all those things, which is justified? He spoke for farmers' protest, and we all know how farce was his protest today. So what do you speak on the Canadian Prime Minister? What is his standing today?
Now, do you remember when I've had a very standard definition of protest, which is a protest is perfectly legal as long as it doesn't inconvenience people. And when I say inconvenience people, I mean physically inconvenience people. You can have extremely disturbing ideas or whatever, but as long as you are not blockading people or making their lives miserable, hooting and honking, it's perfectly fine. Now, that's my definition. The problem is that is not Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's definition, and that isn't Justin Trudeau's definition. Because remember, AOC was supporting the truckers, and I think one of the farmers' protests in India, and her comment was, the point of a protest is to inconvenience you. If it isn't inconveniencing you, it's not a protest. Justin Trudeau, when the farmers were blockading Delhi, he said, we stand by the right of people to protest peacefully everywhere. He said that, incidentally, after those same protesters had uprooted poles, they desecrated the Red Fort, they ruined the Republic Day celebrations, they broke and beat up police, they beat up police, they chopped off people's hands, they dismembered people with knives and swords, they lynched people to death on camera, and he called it a peaceful protest. Okay. And they were wearing photos of a terrorist who used to kill innocent women and children, a terrorist who used to kill unarmed people. Now, when the same thing happens in Canada, not even 1% of the violence, they haven't uprooted anything. They haven't, all they're doing is honking and blockading. Okay, they have not assaulted police. The police have assaulted them, but they haven't assaulted police. He calls this unacceptable. He says this is illegal and illegitimate and whatnot. And he uses the fact that there are one or two people waving swastikas or KKK flags or whatever to smirch the entire movement. Now, personally, I feel that you can't block and honk all night. But according to him, blocking and honking was peaceful protest a year back. What's changed? By his own definition, it is a perfectly peaceful protest.
Yeah.
This fellow, remember, he's just a pretty boy. And like most pretty boys, this is one of those important things. People make fun of, like Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde. People make fun of blonde girls. But remember, blonde, this sort of gold digger stereotype, they may be very stupid, but they're socially extremely smart because they know how to get the guy, they know how to get the rich guy, and they know how to, get him not to sign a prenup, and they know how to walk away with the money, if need be. Justin Trudeau's like that. He's an extraordinarily dumb fellow at one level, but he's extraordinarily corrupt, conniving, opportunistic, hypocrite at another level. And he's smart because he can actually get people to believe his crap.
He has kind of Canadian truckers have motivated American truckers to some extent. And the hypocrisy which you just told is palpable. We can see it. We can see the hypocrisy there. Now, another thing which comes up to, again, we go back to Tucker Carlson. And when he produced this report, exactly similar words, but not exactly, but similar words he used, what he used just now. And the parallels that he drew to the support of the BLM movement. BLM movement was also very violent.
It was extremely violent.
Extremely violent movement. And what happened to the personal property of so many people who are still struggling with the insurance. I know one or two friends of mine whose shops are burned down for no reason of theirs, and they're Indian Americans. Their shops are burned down, and still they have to depend on the state help to live, actually. And there is no, I mean, the reason was local politician told them was that you had to support them. He said, how could we support when we were looted? Everything in the shop was taken out. So there is no money left for the inventories for them to manage. Now, the same parallels, when you bring it to both the sides, then...
And, mind you, the BLM founder bought 2 ultra luxury homes, one in some island in Puerto Rico or something, or one in this thing. How much money do actual victims? She is not going to be a victim of gun violence. Let's be clear about that. But how much money do they actually set aside for the victims of gun violence? This is, the classic thing I've seen. Today, being an NGO is the most profitable thing you can do. The more you grandstand and virtue signal, the more money you get. And there's nothing we can do about it. I think Black Lives Matter is one of the most hypocritical, violent, and dangerous movements. Does racism exist in the US police forces? Yes, undeniably it does. But the kind of crap that we see mainstreamed as racial justice or whatever is extraordinarily dangerous, because it's really Nazi race theory turned on its head. I oppose Nazism in all its forms and manifestations, including in BLM.
The word fascism is used against many people who tend to speak honestly and truthfully, and that they're fascist. I could never understand the meaning of fascism in the current context, because fascism was used in mostly in the government circles. How can people be called fascist in many ways? What is your take on that? Like, if people like all these Republican commentators are called fascist by some of the BLM guys.
So here's the thing. Fascism is for the state to have a monopoly on violence, and for the state to use that monopoly on violence at the drop of a hat. But isn't it amazing that most fascist movements were actually deeply socialist? Nazi is an acronym for what? National Socialist. Right? Franco wasn't a socialist by any stretch of the imagination, but Mussolini was extraordinarily socialist. He had no time for religion. He didn't like the Pope. A lot of his stuff was anti-clerical and anti-papal, till he realized, Italy isn't a country where you can pull this off. So, you have to kind of accommodate and just get them out of the way kind of thing. But tell me, what technique or method did they use that Stalin or Mao Zedong did not? We all did the exact same thing, right? So this definition between a fascist and socialist, the only difference is socialists kill more people than fascists. Given a choice between socialism and fascism, I would choose fascism any day, every day, day after day. Why? Because it's just lesser socialism. That's it. The chances of you, empirically speaking, the chances of you being killed by a fascist are less than a chance of you being killed by a socialist.
The American universities have become the new hub.
Now,
Go ahead.
one second.
Yeah.
This is the particularly amazing thing in America when people call some people fascist. A fascist wants a state monopoly on violence, whereas the American right is the exact opposite of that. They believe in gun rights, individual rights to own guns and individualized violence. That's the very opposite of a fascist. So, it takes a remarkable case of cranial rectal inversion for you to be calling somebody fascist. This is called Godwin's law. The less logical your argument becomes, the more you are likely to invoke Hitler or fascism. And what we see today is an institutionalized mass application of Godwin's law to every single situation.
Now, most of the times, the definition of fascism is loosely, mostly name calling nowadays. Doesn't mean anything. They don't understand what is fascism means. Now, coming to the American university systems, now they are producing pro-socialist, liberal in American context is totally different meaning than Indian context. In the Indian context, liberal means a free-thinking and open-minded person, but whereas in the case of American liberalism, which is called classical liberalism, which means that a person doesn't believe in the Bible or Christian teachings. Generally, that is the meaning. And that's the fight between Democrats and the Republicans, which is pro-church, pro-Bible. Now, but in the universities, if you get there, socialism is the new in thing. And most of there is a very famous guy, he's part of the Hoover's institution, and Van Anderson. That person is, I like it, the way he talks, very sensible, very commonsensical, very pro-India talk. Now, I was seeing that the American university system is producing such kind of people. And so they're literally producing recruits for CNN, and which is the Stelter type of people, Humpty Dumpty. So what do you have to say on that?
This is something that is a product of humanities is largely opinions. Okay, unlike the sciences, which requires actual research. And the problem is, the more and more Ivy Leagues discovered that they could sell humanity degrees at premium prices, even though the cost of the degree is significantly less. Say you do a Bachelor of Science in Physics at MIT. It's what, about $50,000, $60,000 per semester? Something like that, approximately? What is it?
Approximately like that in the private campuses, yes.
Yeah. A humanities degree will only be slightly less, if at all that.
Yeah, slightly less. not much.
But for physics, you actually require a lot of equipment and material to be doing all your lab work and testing and things like that. For humanities, the investment required is almost zero, right? The fees of just one student, $50,000 to $60,000 per semester, is enough for a professor to go to any part of the world, traveling business class, staying in 5 stars, doing a solid 1 month of research, and come back, and that's it. Right? So they realized it was extremely profitable having these degrees. And the need to have that Ivy League stamp of approval on you was very high. So these degrees would sell. They thought, if you're from Harvard, nobody looks at what you're actually done in Harvard. You could be from the divinity school or the political science school, and you'll still land up with a job purely on virtue of being from Harvard. Right? So what happens is they now have to create markets so that these people who are normally unemployable get employment. So what has happened is you have a lot of very shrill opinions substituting for any real substance and research. And you have a market that is now being shaped in order not to absorb facts and ground reporting, but in order to absorb shrill opinion. That's it. It's actually a function of the market.
The employability of many of these graduates. I mean, I don't know. Like, do we need this kind of humanity education, or this kind of, because we do need some kind of civil, but civil connection, social sciences education. But the way it is going towards is a protest-based education or disruptive mindset. Disruption is always good if it leads to a better good for people. It helps people. But the disruptive mindset of breaking the social code without proposing a new framework, which is very bad, because now you are leaving people in a lurch. Now they cannot go forward.
No. The framework is very clear. Don't you for a minute think these people don't know what they're doing? It's a deliberate attempt at social control. Remember, we're essentially returning to the Dark Ages. This is how social control was exercised in the Dark Ages during feudalism. You never knew what was going to get you in front of a witch hunt or a blasphemy trial and for you to be burnt alive at the stake or thrown into a dungeon. That's exactly what we're going back to today. They decided that there was too much freedom, and one of the ways of controlling that freedom is an amorphous set of Jacques methodologies which are targeted to specific people and have no consistency, like we said, like, for example, Dan Winslow versus Joe Rogan. And it works because see, the thing about a consistent law is everybody is clear on what is a violation of that law and what is not a violation of that law. So you tailor your actions so that it does not cross that line, or you cross that line knowingly. Today, you don't know where the line lies. Anybody can come at you for anything at any point of time. This is literally Robespierre's reign of terror. And, social cancellation is the equivalent of the guillotine today. And that's the way it is. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is there doesn't need to be an articulated alternate. The alternate has already been discussed several times over. There is an anarchist point of view. There is a nihilist point of view. People think this is an anarchist point of view. But remember, this is what all socialist revolutions did. In China, in Russia, in Cuba, they used to spread terror and social dissension as a means of grabbing power. So if you remember the 1920, was it the 1921 election, where the Bolsheviks only got 17% of the vote, Lenin dismissed the entire election saying, well, the elections were irrelevant anyway. So this is just the more anarchy that rises, the more you have the creation of a strong man or strong woman or strong person, as the case may be today, to take over, control, and permanently restrict rights. And notice that is what we saw in the guise of COVID. When people like, say, example, James Lindsay or Joe Rogan were saying that these mask controls and things like that, they're being used to stifle, being used to claw back individual rights given over hundreds of years. I was like, come along, man, you're being too alarmist. Today, if you see what's happening in Canada, that is exactly what is happening. You see what's happened in Britain, that is exactly what is happening. It's scary. And if it doesn't scare you, well, then, you're probably not very aware of what's happening around you. Wake up.
No, see, when you talk about the students who are in the campuses, these kind of shows really give them some perspective from an international point of view, where we talk about issues looking from the outside. Now, but when you are inside the system, it's difficult to see it. The change is gradual. For most of the people who are young minds, for them, the basic fight for giving the next installment of the college tuition, or paying the rent of their house, or the students have a very hard life, especially people who are not coming from very wealthy families. They have to work 2 or 3 jobs a day and to make sure that they make the ends meet. So in that kind of situation, the money connected to these kind of ideologies is huge. Like, I'll just give you an example. A survey done by the similar groups is the fastest way to enroll a person. And then when that person gets enrolled part of the survey, now he's part of the ecosystem. He makes money or she makes money. So there is a vicious cycle. It's once you're into it, it takes you until you are 40, you cross 40, then you start realizing what I was doing. That's why it is said, at the age of 20, you become a socialist, but at the age of 40, you become a practical guy. And then you turn towards other alternates of socialism.
Like they say, it's very easy to be a socialist on other people's money. When it becomes your own money, then you turn capitalist.
That's right.
The problem is, we have essentially bred a society that is free of consequence. It's completely free of consequence. That is why it has turned so socialist. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's done. This should have been picked up long back. If you remember, the Washington Post, they ran a news piece just before the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, saying it was it was noticed that leftists are taking over university education. This was happening in 1989. The Washington Post referred to it with alarm. Today, the Washington Post is a left-wing madhouse. It's only relatively sane when it's compared to the New York Times.
That's right. Or New York Times and New York Post. New York Post is the worst of them.
New York Post is right-wing, no?
No, New York Times is right-wing. in the Times.
No. New York Times is the left, the crazy left.
Is it?
New York Post is the right-wing one.
So now if you compare the American copy into Indian models, now the India also there is a Indian universities usually follow the American model. There is no independence there. What do you think is the it's a lighter question, and please don't, and no new viewers should mind it. Who is the parallel to Stelter in India? What comes to your mind?
Ooh, tough question. I'd have to say the closest we get to Brian Stelter is Pagadika Ghosh.
All right.
She's just as unhinged, deranged, and crooked as Brian, but so full of self-righteousness and an inability to introspect.
By Brian Stelter, I would rate him one notch higher on that category than her, because she is literally sold out. She has no views of her own, literally.
No, she's not sold out at all. She's just mad. That's why we call her Pagalika.
All right.
She's stark raving mad, dude. She's certifiable. As in, there's something genuinely psychologically wrong with her.
Her husband has to take care. Her husband was given a rough in New York for his comments and violence. He started the violence in New York.
That was really unfortunate. I mean, at some point, look, guys, if somebody goes on haranguing you and harassing you, at some point you lose your temper.
Yeah.
Right. That's a human failing. There's nothing we can do about it. Does he have an agenda? Yeah. But, I mean, fine. But that was a human failing. That's it.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, for your time today. And thank you for all the viewers for watching. I hope it gave you some insight in a little bit funny way. And keep commenting and let us know your feedback. Namaste. Thank you.